One of the first things you want to do is safely raise and support your vehicle. Once you have it raised and supported with the wheel off the ground, you're going to remove the hubcap. We'll start by the center. That comes right off. Now we're going to remove these little plastics. 19 millimeter. Off of here. Off of there. Now we're going to remove our 21 millimeter lug nuts. Remove your wheel. Let's put some penetrant on these right here. That's what holds up the sway bar. Let that sit for a second. Now that we've let those sit, let's go ahead and remove the nuts using a 15 millimeter. Okay, that lets that down for us. Now we should be able to pull this just like that. Perfect. Next, what we need to do is make it so the power steering rack can move around so we can get our bolts out that hold the control arm to the subframe. Using an 18 millimeter. Move that. This one. Same thing. Just going to pry on this a little bit. Moves around pretty decently. Okay. Awesome. Let's remove our ball joint nut using a 24 millimeter. To hold the stud from spinning, we're going to try to use some of these locking pliers, and I'm going to continue heating this nut, so hopefully it'll want to come off a little easier than what it is. There it is. Continuing on with our 24 millimeter, remove this nut. Set that aside. Let's bonk this out of here. Remove this 24 millimeter nut right here, which is on the forward portion of the control arm. Let's go ahead and give this a little bonk, try to drive it through. You can see it breaking free. Commence the bonking. Now we're going to relieve the rearward portion of this control arm. There's 3 15 millimeter headed bolts. Okay. At this point, it's going to want to start coming down, so just be careful. Of course, the ball joint's still in over there, and we've got the other bolt in, but for safety's sake, be careful. Nice. Next, we're going to work on trying to get out that lower bolt. I'm going to use a 10 millimeter swivel. Get it right on there with my extensions coming up high. That looks great. I'll grab it right out of there. There it is. Set it aside. So we made our way underneath the vehicle, and here we have a clear view of the steering shaft. At this point, we're going to use a nice long pry bar, and we're just going to try to get it off of the steering box. Once we get it off of there, we're going to work at getting it out the top. Use this as a pry bar, as I should. Okay, it's coming right up. There it is. That popped right up. To remove these studs that hold the rack in, they give you this little 8 millimeter head right here. The problem with doing that is it's so small, it always just rounds out. If for some reason that happens to you, just use 2 nuts that are the right thread pattern. Screw it on there. You get that one so it's on there, enough threads so I can put my second one on. And then I'm going to put them right against each other. And I should be able to lock them in against each other and then remove the stud. Let's give it a try. Okay, I got plenty of threads showing. Take my second one, do the same thing. Now that we have those two nuts jammed together, I'm just going to try taking out the stud. You can try using the inside nut. A lot of times you won't get very much throw. I like to try using the outside nut and just hope that it's holding enough. Let's see. All right, I can see it spinning the whole stud. Looks like we're doing all right. Let's get this right out of here. There's our stud. Now we'll do the same to the other side. Use your 11mm and remove this nut. Pull this off of here. There we go. Grab our power steering rack. Should move around fairly easily here. Let's remove our outer tie rod end nut using an 18mm. There it is. There we are. Just wiggle this. There we go. That comes down a little bit, and that's all we need. Okay. Use a pry bar. Just try to work this out of here. So now we need to get the stud out of right there. Oh, it's so close. There we go. Got our brand new control arm here. Also comes with a brand new nut, which is very important. We'll set that aside because we're going to use it. Now we're going to get the ball joint stud up through here first. There it is. You can start that nut on there if you're worried about it. Come down this way. You've got your shock. It needs to come through the center here. We've got this one right here, and then we've got this plate. You need to make sure that this plate is going to be facing up against there. You don't want to press it all the way up in there and then realize you can't get this turned, okay? Pull that down. Give that a couple loving bonks. That looks decent. That up there. Let's grab our bolt. Right through. Just slip this nut on there. Cleaned up our 3 bolts for this, and I add a little bit of thread locker. It's time to get the shock lined up with the lower control arm. Keep in mind that this bolt comes through from the rear to the front. I'm going to use a little punch. I'm going to come right in through like this. You can use something as simple as a screwdriver, whatever you've got. You don't need a special tool. Just line up that hole. Put the bolt through. Put your nut on there. Let's bottom out this lower ball joint nut using a 22mm socket. Torque it to manufacturer's specifications. Torque this to 111 foot-pounds. Torqued. Now we're just going to jack up the control arm to get it at approximately ride level. There we go. That's pretty good. Now we're just going to bottom out this nut. Let's bottom out this one. Next, we're going to tighten up these 15mm bolts. And lastly, snug this one. Torque this to 166 foot-pounds. Torqued. Torque this to 166 foot-pounds as well. Torqued. Torque this to 129 foot-pounds. Torqued. Tighten these to 66 foot-pounds. Torqued. Remove your jack. So now it's going to be time to install our rack mounting studs here. Just in case you were using that 8mm headed end when we were removing it, you would just put the thread locker down on the opposite end, of course. Okay? And if you're using the double net method, which is what I had to use to get them out, I'm obviously going to put it on the other end. Perfect. Let's get these started in the vehicle. Let's get this in there. Okay. Got a couple good threads. Okay, that's bottomed out. Let's torque this to 13 foot-pounds. Tight. Do the same to the other side of the vehicle. Let's bottom this out. Same to the other side. Now we'll torque these down to 76 foot-pounds. Torqued. Let's get this line back up on here. It should just slide right there. Tighten that up. Tight. Let's get this up on here. Let's bottom these out. Torque them to 46 foot-pounds. Nice. At this point, we can continue on to the lower part of the shaft. We're going to get that onto the steering box. Just grab it, line it up. We've got the slotted area on the steering box shaft there. Line it up with the bolt hole on the shaft itself. Turn that a little bit. Okay, slides right on there. Perfect. Let's get that bolt started in. I've got a little bit of thread locker on this one as well. Start that bolt in nice and pretty. Very nice. Okay, now we can tighten them up. Let's torque these steering shaft bolts to 22 foot-pounds. So when you go to put on your outer tie rod end nut, you might notice that the stud just wants to spin, spin, spin. If that's the case, you just want to put a little bit of pressure under there. So I'm going to put my jack, a little piece of wood, hopefully. Just jack it up. This is going to apply pressure in between here. Start my nut on there. All right, fingers crossed. A little bit of thread locker. Here we go. Now let's torque it to manufacturer specifications. Torque this to 59 foot-pounds. Tight. Let's get our wheel up on here. Grab our lug nuts. Bottom them out. Torque your lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds. Torqued. Let's get our hubcap back on here. You'll notice you have your valve stem hole. Always put these on by hand. Awesome.